Underneath the pale moonlight, the dusty streets of Red River lay silent. But in the shadows, danger brewed like a rattlesnake poised to strike. Rumors swept through the town like wildfire, whispers of a woman who wielded power with a straightforward grace that bordered on menace. They said she was dangerous, but one man, a seasoned gunslinger named Clay Tanner, felt differently. On a night thick with tension, the saloon doors swung open, creaking softly. Clay sauntered in, his weathered hat casting a shadow over his rugged face. The usual clatter and laughter dimmed as eyes turned toward him. He was a man forged by hardship, each scar a testament to battles fought and hard lessons learned. But his gaze was drawn not to the wooden bar or the scattered poker tables. No, it was her. There she stood, a siren draped in dark fabric with hair like raven feathers cascading over her shoulders. Eliza Hart. She held her own kind of gravity, pulling the room into her orbit. Risk and seduction danced in her eyes, igniting a fire that set the very air ablaze. The troublemaker, they say, Clay mused aloud, stepping closer. Nearby, the poker game froze, players too captivated or too fearful to continue. A grizzled man at the bar, all leather and skepticism, broke the silence. They say she shot a man just for looking at her. Clay's brow furrowed. He had heard the stories, how she ended the lives of 3 men in a single night, how she didn't flinch when the lead roared past her. The townfolk spoke as if she were the devil wearing a woman's skin, but he saw it differently. He saw a battle-hardened soul in a world that tried relentlessly to strip away her humanity. As the brutal history of men spilled through the air, Eliza caught Clay's gaze. A subtle smile danced across her lips, a challenge hidden within. The message was clear: he could join the chorus or dive deeper. Clay couldn't resist. He pushed through the crowd, the murmurings fading as he reached her table. He asked, a hint of mischief in his tone. Eliza raised an eyebrow, a spark flickering. "Heat's never bothered me," he replied, tipping his hat. Her laughter was like a firecracker in the still of the night. They settled into conversation, each probing word peeling back the layers obscuring her life. Eliza was no simple villain, she was a survivor. Her past was riddled with heartache, betrayals, lost loves, and family torn apart. The tales she told were real and raw. She spoke of her younger brother, caught in the chaos of a gang war, leaving her with a burning desire to protect her remaining family by any means necessary. "They don't see me as I am," she shared, her voice softening. "They see a woman with a gun, a threat, but they don't know what it means to fight for something." Clay felt a stir in his chest, recognition illuminating his heart. He knew what it meant to fight not just for oneself, but for everything that held meaning. The world was filled with misjudgment, just as Eliza had described. As night slipped into an uneasy silence, the saloon doors burst open, shattering the fragile peace. A gang of rough men stormed in, eyes gleaming with malice. They were here to impose their will, letting the townsfolk know they were still in charge. But what they didn't know was that courage had a way of rising when it was least expected. Clay's instincts kicked in. He saw the danger lurking behind bravado, the way those men fanned out, eyes searching for prey. The patrons whispered and shrank back, fear rippling through the crowded room. Eliza's fingers twitched at her side, her expression shifting like the storm clouds that trailed through the land. "There are too many of them, Clay. We need a plan," she murmured, her voice low yet steady. A part of him wanted to protect her, to keep her out of harm's way, but another part recognized the fierceness that thrived within her. "We don't retreat." With a quick nod, she pulled her revolver from its holster, the silver gleaming under the dim light. It was a beautiful piece, ornate yet deadly, much like its owner. The tension thickened as the gang approached. "Well, look what we have here," the leader sneered, his voice oozing condescension. "A little show of defiance. Cute." Clay stepped forward, pushing Eliza gently behind him. "Too late for that," the leader answered, a wicked grin splitting his face. But in that moment, something shifted. Eliza moved, stepping beside Clay, her presence electric. She felt the weight of everything at stake, and when she raised her gun, it was not merely to threaten. It was to protect the people whose faces had faded into shadow behind closed doors, whose silence had become their shackles. "Leave," she commanded, the word ringing clear. The leader spat, but Clay remained steadfast, his heart hammering in his chest. "I'm someone who refuses to back down," she replied, steely resolve anchoring her voice. The standoff was electric, each moment stretching into infinity. Those rough men were used to submitting the weak, but they had never faced a woman like Eliza. Fear was something they thrived on, but she had learned to embrace danger. When shots rang out later that night, it was a symphony of defiance, the first blast shattering expectations, the next silencing the skeptics. Eliza fought fiercely beside Clay, their sync like a well-rehearsed dance. The air was thick with gunpowder and purpose. With each shot, she transcended the label of danger, becoming a force to reckon with, blazing a path of fire and light through shadows cast over her life. When the smoke cleared, the gang lay sprawled on the floor, pride dissolved into regret. Eliza and Clay stood unscathed but heavy with the realization of what had unfolded. Her voice carried a hint of exhilaration, a breathless edge. "You've proved that," he replied, all resonating in his tone. In that weary moment, he saw her clearly for the first time, not just as a legend in a dusty town, but as a woman of strength, shaped by loss and courage. But why look for danger? Eliza looked past him, her gaze fierce and unwavering. "Peace is a luxury, Gunslinger. I've learned that danger is where I find my purpose. This town, it needs fighters." Clay felt his heart stir, a deep understanding blossoming within him. Their worlds were not so different after all. Both had fought battles that left scars on their souls, but those scars had forged their identities. That night changed everything. The fire they sparked illuminated a path filled with promise, opening doors to possibilities unknown. They could be more than mere survivors. They could redefine what bravery truly meant. As dawn broke, painting the sky in warm hues, a curious peace settled over the town. Eliza stood at the edge of the street, her gaze fixed on the horizon. Clay stepped beside her, the weight of their adventure past still fresh in his mind but fueled with optimism. Together, they walked into the dawn, side by side, two unlikely allies ready to face whatever the world dared to throw at them. They wouldn't always be understood, but they were no longer alone. And in that union, danger morphed into strength, and they realized the true power of connection, fighting not just for themselves, but for each other. No longer merely fugitives of expectations, they became architects of destiny, marching forward into a world that had underestimated them. Their journey had just begun, and together they would carve a path through the noise, leaving whispers of doubt in their wake. And as the sun rose, illuminating a new day, they knew one thing with certainty. Sometimes in the face of danger, you discover not just who you are, but who you can become. Under a blood-red sunset in the dusty town of Dry Creek, a storm was brewing. People whispered tales of a woman who had become legend, feared and revered in equal measure. They called her Dangerous Liz, a name that filled saloons with hushed conversations and wary glances. But behind every fearsome reputation lies a story waiting to be uncovered. On that fateful evening, a shadow moved through the darkness of the saloon, drawing the attention of every man with a half-empty whiskey glass. At a table near the back, Liz sat alone, a lone wolf surveying her territory. She leaned back, fingers playing with a golden pendant that dangled from her neck, a simple token, but one that held memories of a life before chaos consumed her. The air around her was charged, thick with tension. When the town's gunslinger, a man named Cole Masters, pushed open the creaking doors, the atmosphere shifted. Tall and rugged, with an air of confidence, he entered like a storm rolling into town. A hush fell over the room as every eye turned toward him. The whispers swelled. He was known for his quick draw and sharp tongue, but tonight his gaze was fixed squarely on Liz. He sauntered through the crowd, a half-smile playing on his lips. He said, tilting his hat back slightly, revealing eyes that flickered with genuine curiosity. Liz looked up, her expression unreadable. "And you must be the famed Gunslinger." The words dripped with a mix of challenge and disdain, but her heart raced at the sight of him. He pulled out a chair, the sound of wood scraping against the floor sending a shiver through the room. The room held its breath, knowing that Liz's reputation left little room for newcomers, but she nodded, intrigued despite herself. As they settled into conversation, the truth behind the story started to unfurl. Liz shared fragments of her life, pieces that painted her not as the monster the townsfolk believed, but as a survivor, molded by loss and circumstance. She recounted how she had fought to protect her family when they were ripped apart by the violence of life in the West. "People don't see the struggle," she admitted, her voice dropping in intensity. Cole leaned in, captivated. "I get that," he said, revealing layers of his own past. He spoke of his younger years, how he had fought against the system, how each bullet fired came with a weight of choices made and lives lost. He understood the shadows people carried. He had his own. But their conversation was abruptly interrupted when the saloon doors swung open again, this time slamming against the wall. A group of men, all leather and grit, staggered in, intoxicants and arrogance spilling from their presence. They were the Coal Creek Gang, known for leaving destruction in their wake. "Look what we have here. A couple of misfits looking for trouble," one of them sneered, his gaze locking onto Liz. "Ain't you a sight for sore eyes, darling?" Liz shot back, bravado lacing her voice. "More like to remind you who runs this town," sneered another, eyes gleaming with malice. The tension in the room thickened and the bartender hurriedly poured a drink, eyes darting back and forth, anticipating the violence that might follow. Cole felt the hairs on his neck stand up. He turned to Liz, seeing the fire in her eyes. She was ready to fight for her place, for respect that had been denied to her for too long. "Stay close," he murmured, his voice low but firm. She asked, her expression challenging. "We have to be smart." But Liz didn't listen. She stood, shoulders back, chin tilted upward. "You think you can intimidate me?" The lead thug took a step forward, laughing menacingly. "Oh, we know." Without missing a beat, Liz drew her gun, the sound crisp and electrifying in the heavy atmosphere. The gang froze, and for a heartbeat, time stood still. Then, as if breaking some silent code, the men reached for their weapons and chaos erupted. Cole reacted in an instant, his gun drawn, and he moved beside Liz. They stood back to back, fighting like two forces of nature, each shot tearing into the dynamic between fear and power. Liz was a whirlwind, moving with fluid grace, while Cole matched her energy, a well-oiled machine neither could have anticipated. As gunfire broke out, Liz and Cole wove their way through the chaos with agility. Bullets whizzed past, windows shattered, and the air thickened with smoke and adrenaline. Liz felt alive, exhilarated. In that moment, she wasn't just dangerous Liz, she was a force. After a frenzied few minutes, the gang lay scattered on the floor, defeated and groaning. Cole turned to Liz, breathless but grinning. She smirked, a glimmer of amusement in her eyes. But it wasn't just a thrill for her. The reality of violence hung around like an unwanted fog. She asked, the bravado slipping, replaced by a flicker of vulnerability. He looked around, taking in the broken glass and the frightened faces of the onlookers. That weight settled heavily between them, an understanding forged in the fires of conflict. This wasn't just about survival, it was about standing firm in a world that constantly threatened to bow them down. "Go be a hero," she said, her voice suddenly serious. "But know that I can handle myself. I won't run." "I admire that," he said, sincerity shining in his eyes. "But even heroes need help." As night closed around Dry Creek, Liz felt something shift within her. Someone had stood with her, not just in battle but in belief. Cole had seen something beneath the surface of her dangerous exterior. Days turned into a week, and through the chaos that had erupted, an unspoken bond formed between Liz and Cole. They trained together, fought together, and shared laughter over whiskey and stories that stitched their hearts together. Each moment became a sanctuary, a place to rebuild what the world had tried to take from them. But not everything was perfect. The Coal Creek Gang regrouped, their anger simmering just beneath the surface. They would come back, their egos bruised and thirsting for vengeance. Liz and Cole knew it would become a battle not just for territory but for their very selves. In the saloon on another fateful evening, the atmosphere simmered with anticipation. Liz and Cole stood together, strategizing as the room buzzed around them. They needed to plan something bold enough to send a message that they wouldn't back down any longer. Cole proposed, eyes alight with determination. Liz raised an eyebrow. "And then what?" "Then we show them we're ready." There was something exhilarating about the idea, the rush of taking control. "All right then," she said, a sly smile curling on her lips. The trap was set and they waited, hidden behind barrels and shadows. When the gang stormed in with the arrogance of predators, thinking they'd catch their prey, they found only defiance. Liz and Cole stepped into the light, unyielding. "Welcome back," Liz called, her voice echoing with strength. The leader growled, fury radiating off him. Cole scoffed, his gun drawn. The confrontation that followed was a dance of wills, the air electric with gunfire and adrenaline. Liz felt alive, the thrill coursing through her veins. This wasn't just about survival, it was about transforming fear into empowerment. With each flash of gunfire, she saw more clearly. This battle was more than bullets. It was reclaiming agency in a world that sought to diminish them. Together, they embraced the wild chaos, standing side by side like the warriors they were born to be. When the dust settled, the Coal Creek gang lay defeated, the taste of victory bittersweet but real. Liz turned to Cole, her heart racing, and a smile broke through her fierce exterior. He laughed, the sound rich with triumph. In that moment, under the radiant light of a setting sun, something deeper flickered between them, a connection forged not just in battle but in understanding. They were no longer just a legendary gunslinger and a dangerous woman. They were a partnership bound by the scars of their past and the hope for their future. As they rode out of Dry Creek, the dust swirling behind them, they knew they weren't just running from danger. They were moving toward something greater, an alliance built on trust, strength, and the undeniable charge of taking control of their own stories. So here they were, two souls defying the odds, proving every whisper and every judgment wrong. They weren't just surviving, they were thriving. And in a world that often mistook fear for power, they had found a bond that would ignite change, leaving the echoes of their legends forever etched into the fabric of time. Sometimes in the heart of danger lies the truest essence of strength. And together, Liz and Cole embodied that strength with every heartbeat. In the heart of Blackwater, a town shrouded in whispers and shadows, a storm was brewing. The saloon doors swung open with a heavy creak, and a hush fell over the patrons gathered inside. Her reputation stretched far and wide. She was a gunslinger feared by many, a person who had taken down more than one man who underestimated her. But in that tense moment, when the room held its breath, a new player entered the scene, a gunslinger named Jack Ryder, whose very presence seemed to challenge the chaos. Jack had heard the stories about me. They said she lived by the gun and danced on the edge of danger, leaving a trail of broken hearts and shattered egos. But he was different. He saw the fire in her eyes and the fierceness behind her grit. He didn't believe the tales that painted her as just another killer. No, he sensed there was more beneath that tough exterior. As he approached her table, the eyes that had been watching the saloon turned his way, tension crackling like the air before a lightning strike. Me looked up, her expression steely yet composed. She asked, her voice smooth like velvet but laced with challenge. "Not at all," he replied, a smirk tugging at the corners of his mouth. Her eyebrow raised slightly, intrigued. "You," he said simply, leaning forward. The corners of her mouth twitched, perhaps in amusement or perhaps in defiance. "I think I'll find a woman who's had to fight for what she wants," Jack replied, leaning back with a confidence that made her heart race. Me considered his words, the tension shifting as the saloon resumed its rhythm around them. The patrons exchanged glances, wondering how long this newcomer would last in front of the fire. But something deeper flickered in her gaze, of vulnerability mixed with curiosity that she hadn't expected to feel. He grinned. In that shared moment, a spark ignited. But before either could delve deeper, the saloon doors flew open again, and a group of rough-looking men stormed in, their presence like an impending storm. They were the notorious Iron Fist Gang, known for their ruthlessness and brutal tactics. The leader of the gang, a hulking man named Gus, focused on me, a sneer curling his lip. Well, if it isn't dangerous, me." She shot back, instinctively reaching for the revolver holstered at her side. He stepped closer, eyes glinting with malice. "We're tired of your ways, me." Jack felt the air thicken just as he sensed me's heartbeat quicken. He knew instinctively that this was a test, not just of weapons but of character. Without thinking, he stood beside her, his presence an unwavering shield. "Back off, Gus," Jack said, his voice steady and calm. The gang laughed, a cruel sound that echoed through the saloon. "What's this?" Gus mocked. "I'm not playing," Jack replied. In that charged moment, the tension snapped. The first shot rang out and Jack felt the world slow around him. He turned side by side with me as gunfire erupted. They moved as if choreographed, each shot ringing true, a testament to their skill. Jack was impressed by Mi's fierce precision. She was a whirlwind, striking with every shot she fired. He realized then that her reputation had only scratched the surface of what she was capable of. It wasn't just danger she brought, it was power, raw and fierce. The fight rattled the saloon, chaos exploding like fireworks. With each shot, the gang members fell, their bravado replaced by fear as Jack and Mi quickly outplayed them. It was a dance, a dangerous waltz that led them through the aftermath of violence together. Finally, silence fell, the only sounds the heavy breathing of the two gunslingers as they surveyed the chaos. The gang lay defeated, nursing wounds or lamenting the hubris that led them to challenge Mi. Jack turned to her, adrenaline coursing through him. Mi's expression softened, a flicker of gratitude in her eyes. "You held your own out there," she admitted, her voice quieter now. "I didn't just fight for myself, I fought for you," he replied, no longer masking the connection that had grown between them. "I see you, Mi, not just the dangerous living legend." That moment hung in the air, heavy with unspoken feelings, but Mi, fierce and independent, shook her head slightly, pushing back against the tide of emotion threatening to overwhelm her. "That's your armor," Jack said gently, stepping a little closer. "But it's okay to feel." The doors creaked open again and the saloon owners came out looking bewildered and scared. They glanced at the broken furniture, the wreckage, and the fallen gang members, eyes wide with disbelief. The bartender uttered, voice trembling. "For now," Jack said, straightening up, his voice authoritative. "But it's time we put an end to this." With shared determination, they knew what had to come next. The Iron Fist gang wouldn't stay down for long. Blackwater needed every capable gun, every brave heart. As days blended into nights, Mi and Jack formed a powerful alliance. They trained under the stars, learning from each other, forging a bond that was fierce like the storms they faced. Jack had often found himself lost in thought, grappling with his past, the weight of old scars. But every conversation with Mi brought clarity. She opened up about her own battles, how she had taken the name Dangerous as a shield against the world's pred judgment. One night, as they settled by a crackling campfire, Jack spoke softly. "You know, being dangerous comes with a cost." Mi stared into the flames, lost in her thoughts. "I had to fight for my survival. I didn't choose this name." "That doesn't mean you have to carry it alone," he replied, his voice gentle yet firm. "Trust can be hard, especially when you face betrayal." A mixture of gratitude and hesitation flickered in her gaze. It was a gargantuan step for Mi, who had to fend for herself for so long. Trusting someone wasn't just a leap. It felt like defying every instinct that kept her alive. But with Jack, she felt a shift. He brought with him a sense of purpose, a belief in something more than just survival. He could see the heart behind the armor, the depth of her spirit that ran deeper than crimson fears. As they continued to prepare for the inevitable confrontation with Iron Fist, the town began to take notice. Rumors spread, and the fear that had once consumed Blackwater turned into fascination. People started to see Mi not just as a danger, but as a protector. Then came the day when word spread that Gus and his gang were plotting revenge. Mi and Jack, side by side, rallied the townsfolk. Together, they forged a plan, lining the streets with hopes and bravado. The showdown approached, tension thick in the air as shadows lengthened. On the day of reckoning, the sun hung low, casting long shadows over the landscape. The streets were lined with townspeople, hearts racing as they anxiously awaited the confrontation. Gus arrived, his gang behind him, swagger dripping from their every step. Confidence was all he had left, but chaos followed like a cloud. Mi stood at the forefront, her chin high, the sun glinting off her revolver. She called out, every word laced with fire. Gus sneered. "You think you've won?" Jack stepped beside her, unwavering. "Fear doesn't run this town anymore." The standoff was electric. Gus's men shifted, unease blooming like wildflowers in spring. And one by one, people stepped out of the shadows, individuals who believed in Mi. In that moment, the tide turned. The townsfolk were no longer mere spectators. They stood with me and Jack, hearts unified against tyranny. The fight that erupted was fierce and desperate, but this time me wasn't alone. Jack was with her. They were a force, weaving between enemy lines, igniting spirits around them. It wasn't just a fight for Blackwater, it was a fight to reclaim their lives. In the heat of the chaos, me thrived, her gun blazing with purpose. Jack covered her, moving as if they'd practiced this all along, the dance of danger guiding them. When the dust finally settled, the Iron Fist gang lay defeated. Gus, exhausted and bruised, crawled away, a shadow of the man he once was. The townsfolk erupted in a cheer, but amidst the chaos, me found Jack. Their eyes met, and in that glance, an understanding blossomed. Fighting together had forged a bond deeper than any armor. "You did it," Jack said, pride flooding his voice. "I didn't just do it alone," she replied, emotion filling her heart. As the townsfolk celebrated around them, me felt a weight lift. She understood what it meant to be both feared and respected. But for the first time, she realized it was more than just proving a point. Jack, standing by her, had helped her find strength in vulnerability. He hadn't seen dangerous me as a monster, but as a warrior, a woman forged through trials and heartache. In the days that followed, Me's legend grew, not as just a dangerous entity, but as a beacon of strength. And alongside her stood Jack, a willing companion whose presence had cracked her armor open, allowing light to seep in. In a world quick to label, the two found freedom in their connection. Me had embraced the fire that once made her dangerous, while Jack grew to understand that every battle fought was a step into authenticity. Together, they forged a new legend, not just of danger, but of resilience, power, and the undeniable strength found in unity. They would face whatever came next, hand in hand, heart to heart, ready to shape a future beyond fear. And as the sun set over Blackwater, casting a golden hue across the landscape, Me wasn't just dangerous anymore. She was a force alive, liberated, and ready to rewrite her own story. Beneath the shadow of the jagged mountains in the small town of Ironwood, a chill crept through the streets as dusk settled in like a thick fog. The saloon bustled with patrons spilling their secrets over whiskey and cards, laughter mingling with the clank of metal. But just below the surface, tension bubbled, the kind that made men uneasy, and whispered tales of a woman who lived by the gun. They said she was dangerous, a force of nature. In a dim corner with her back to the wall sat Faith Mercer, a woman whose reputation had spread faster than wildfire. Word had it she had taken down a notorious outlaw with nothing but a flick of her wrist and a sharp aim. Men feared her, but they also craved the thrill of danger she embodied. Tonight, however, the air felt different. Something was teetering on the edge of chaos. As the saloon doors swung open, a gust of wind swept through, making the lanterns flicker. The figure that stepped inside drew the eyes of everyone present. A gunslinger named Wyatt Cole, tall and seasoned, with a presence that oozed confidence. He scanned the room, spotting Faith almost immediately. With a swagger that turned heads, he made his way to her table, every step deliberate, every gaze keen. He asked, his voice smooth, a hint of challenge woven into his tone. A spark of mischief danced in her eyes. He chuckled, taking a seat across from her. "I've heard tales about you, Faith Mercer." She smirked, unfazed by the flattery. "And what do you believe?" "I believe every legend has a truth buried beneath it, but I'm more interested in what's behind that dangerous facade of yours." In that moment, something shifted. Faith felt a tug on her heart, an unfamiliar weight lifting slightly. Most people only saw her fearsome reputation. They never inquired about the woman behind the gun. She took a breath and decided to take the plunge. "I'm not just dangerous for the sake of it." Wyatt nodded, leaning forward. "I wasn't given much choice," she replied, a hint of vulnerability creeping into her voice. Across the table, Wyatt's expression softened. A few beats passed, their connection deepening beyond the thrill of danger or competition. It was a rare moment of honesty, each seeing something the other had battled with silently, a longing for understanding that transcended the guns they carried. But the ambience shifted again as the saloon doors burst open with a loud bang. A group of rough men stumbled in, the notorious Rusty Spurs gang. Their leader, a hulking figure named Jake, had a reputation for brutality that left a bitter taste in the air. His eyes locked onto Faith, and a sinister grin spread across his face. He roared, drawing the attention of every soul in the saloon. "Heard you've been firing shots that should have left you in jail." "I know I'm tough," Faith replied, her voice unwavering, fueled by a mixture of anger and adrenaline. Jake laughed, the kind of sound that chilled the marrow in one's bones. "I'm here to teach you a lesson." The tension in the room thickened and Wyatt's instincts kicked in. He positioned himself beside Faith, eyes sharp. "You'll want to back off," he warned, his voice steady yet firm. Jake sneered, but Wyatt held his ground unwavering. "Bring it on." And as the words left his mouth, gunfire erupted, shattering the tension and plunging the saloon into chaos. In that split second, time felt frozen. Faith instinctively dove to the side, her heart pounding as bullets flew. Wyatt, quick on his feet, was at her side. They moved together seamlessly, instinct guiding their actions as though they had fought side by side for years. Faith felt alive as she fired her weapon, the recoil igniting a sense of purpose within her. With each shot, she reclaimed her story, a dance with danger that made her feel whole. Wyatt fought beside her, showing a level of skill that impressed her even amidst the chaos. The saloon transformed into a battlefield, the air filled with smoke and adrenaline. In the midst of the furious exchange, Faith caught a glimpse of Wyatt. For every shot he fired, he glanced her way, a silent reassurance that resonated deeply. He saw her not as just a dangerous woman, but as a partner capable of standing her ground. The fight raged on, bodies sprawled across the floor as the Rusty Spurs gang fell one by one. Each pulse of gunfire drew them closer to victory, but also closer to a truth they'd both been avoiding. They were stronger together than apart. As the last of Jake's men lay wounded or defeated, the saloon fell silent, shockwaves rippling through the crowd. Faith stood panting, adrenaline still coursing through her veins. She turned to Wyatt, their eyes locking in a moment of shared triumph. "You held your own," she said, genuinely impressed. "You did too," he replied, his gaze steady. But before they could bask in their victory, Jake, wounded but furious, crawled toward them, rage fueling his determination. "This isn't over," he hissed, his voice dripping with venom. "I'll come back for you, Faith." Just then, the bartender, who had been cowering behind the bar, stepped forward, shaking. "You should leave town, Jake." Jake snarled, directing his words at both Faith and Wyatt. "You think being dangerous is enough?" Faith felt a chill run down her spine, a weight of fear mingling with the courage she had found in herself. "I won't back down." As Jake stumbled out of the saloon, defeated for now, the townspeople began to rally around Faith and Wyatt. Whispers of admiration filled the air. No longer was Faith just a dangerous woman. She had become a symbol of strength, resilience, and unity. Wyatt caught her gaze and smiled, a warmth spreading through her. "You've changed the narrative, Faith." They stood together, surrounded by newfound allies, but the road ahead would still be perilous. The weight of fear might lift for a moment, but shadows always lingered in dark corners. Weeks passed, and as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and gold, Faith and Wyatt found a rhythm in their lives. They trained together, honed their skills, and fortified their resolve. One evening, as they shared laughter over a campfire, Faith looked at Wyatt thoughtfully. "You didn't run when you saw me standing against chaos." He met her gaze steadily. "I saw strength." "You fight for what you believe in, that's what makes you dangerous." Faith felt emotions swelling, gratitude, warmth, and something tender she hadn't allowed herself to acknowledge. A connection blossomed, strong and undeniable. "It's hard to find people who see past reputations," she confessed. "But you're not defined by your past," he replied. "You're defined by who you are now." That night, as they embraced the comfort of camaraderie, Faith felt something transformative take root within her. The realization that strength didn't mean isolation. It meant finding hearts that beat in sync with hers, understanding the battles they fought were better faced together. But darkness lingered in the corners of their lives. Jake was still out there, nursing his wounds and plotting revenge against Faith. The tension loomed over Ironwood, a specter that refused to fade away. The following days were filled with training and planning, a blend of preparation and anticipation pulsing through the air. The townsfolk rallied behind Faith, spurred on by her courage and Wyatt's unyielding support. Together, They formed a united front against the chaos that threatened to engulf them. But the day of reckoning arrived all too soon. The news spread. Jake had returned with a vengeance, gathering a fresh gang of thugs determined to reclaim control. In that defining moment, Faith stood before the townspeople, strength radiating from her. "We've faced the darkness before. We can do it again," she declared, her voice steady. "We face fear not with hopelessness but with unity." Cheers erupted, a swell of determination igniting the crowd. With Wyatt by her side, she felt invincible, a spark igniting her past into a weapon meant not to instill fear, but to protect those who mattered most. The showdown unfolded in the center of Ironwood, tension crackling in the air like lightning. Jake and his gang emerged like a storm, ready to unleash chaos on a town that had dared to defy him. But this time, Faith was prepared. With Wyatt at her side and the support of the townsfolk, she faced Jake not just as a dangerous woman but as a protector, a leader, willing to defend her home. The clash was furious and relentless. Dust swirled around them as gunfire erupted, but Faith felt a surge of strength from the people around her. They fought in unison, united against the darkness that threatened to consume their lives. As chaos reigned, Faith's determination crystallized. Each bullet fired felt like her heart pounding in her chest, a testament to everything she had fought against. Wyatt's presence beside her was a constant reminder that she wasn't alone anymore. In the eye of the storm, Faith locked eyes with Jake, the ultimate showdown spiraling toward them. With grit and resolve, she faced him head-on. "You underestimated me before, and you will again." The air crackled as they squared off, the world around them blurring into insignificance. This wasn't just about defeating an enemy, it was about claiming her identity. Faith fired, her aim true, her determination unwavering. As Jake crumpled to the ground, the darkness began to lift, the weight of fear dissipating like smoke on the wind. In the aftermath, a sense of triumph hung in the air. The townspeople gathered around Faith, celebrating not just a victory but a transformation. Wyatt approached her, a smile breaking across his rugged face. "You did it, Faith. I couldn't have done it without you," she admitted, a warmth in her heart. With uncertainty replaced by hope, they looked into each other's eyes, their connection solidified in the fires of adversity. Through danger, they had forged a bond that would stand the test of time. She had become a symbol of resilience and courage, a beacon of hope for everyone around her. Ironwood thrived, transformed by the light of newfound strength that emerged from the depths of darkness. And together with Wyatt, Faith carved out a future where danger no longer defined her. It merely made her stronger. In the heart of that wild western town, she had found something profound: connection, purpose, and the knowledge that in the grip of danger, the bravest warriors often discover who they truly are. Under the glow of a blood-orange sunset in the town of Copper Grit, a tense atmosphere filled the air like the calm before a storm. Dust danced in the wind, swirling around the worn wooden planks of the saloon where whispers of danger and deceit floated. They said she was dangerous, an unforgiving gunslinger with a heart hardened by a life of survival. But tonight, everything was about to change when the gunslinger herself stepped into the saloon. With a push of the heavy doors, Luna Vega entered. She was striking, with dark hair cascading down her shoulders and eyes that sparkled like the stars in a moonlit sky. The saloon fell into a hush, eyes wide with a mix of fear and awe. Many men had crossed her path and paid dearly, but no one ever truly understood what lay beneath her fierce reputation. Sitting at the bar, the new arrival, a rugged gunslinger named Colt Harper, watched intently. He had heard the tales, how she shot first and asked questions later, how she left her mark without a second thought. But he wasn't just here for the stories. He was here to find the truth. Luna didn't need to scan the room to sense the eyes on her. She walked with confidence, her boots clicking against the wooden floor, each step echoing her indomitable spirit. But as she prepared to order a drink, Colt rose from his seat. The steely resolve in his voice commanded attention. "Depends on who's asking," she replied, her voice smooth as silk, but tinged with something harder, an edge that hinted at a lifetime of battles fought. He stepped closer, intrigued. She narrowed her gaze, challenging him. Colt leaned in undeterred. "I'm not looking for trouble." The tension between them was palpable, an electric charge that crackled through the air. Other patrons in the saloon leaned in, eager to witness the unfolding drama. But in the depths of his eyes, Colt saw something different, a flicker of vulnerability hidden behind the hardness, a yearning for something more than just battles. Luna, feeling the pull of his gaze, decided to test the waters. "You think I'm just a gunslinger? I think there's more to you than just the gun," he said honestly, meeting her gaze. Before Luna could respond, the saloon doors swung open violently. Rough-looking gang stormed in, led by a burly man named Brick Malone, his reputation for violence preceding him. Well, look who we have here," he sneered, his eyes settling on Luna. "The infamous dangerous Luna." "Brick," she said simply, her tone cold and dismissive. "I want you to pay for killing my brother," he growled, stepping closer, fists clenched. The saloon patrons shrank back, fear palpable in the air. Luna stood her ground. "Your brother was a fool who drew on me first." Brick spat, his face flush with rage. Colt, sensing the danger, stepped beside Luna. Brick's laughter echoed through the saloon, a harsh sound. "You think you're brave, gunslinger?" Luna felt a fierce pride swell within her. And with that, chaos erupted. Gunfire rang out, filling the saloon with an energy that felt almost alive. Colt moved like a shadow, his instincts guiding him as he and Luna took their positions, backs against one another. In that moment, everything coalesced. The storms they'd both weathered, the fears they faced, and the fire they shared. Each shot fired felt like a heartbeat, a dance of chaos that brought clarity to Luna's world. She fought with the fury of a woman who had come to know pain, betrayal, and triumph. Colt was a fierce ally, unyielding in his support, mirroring Luna's strikes with his own sharp aim. Fear dissipated, replaced by determination born from years of hardship. As the last of Brick's gang fell to the floor, the saloon was filled with silence. Dust settled, and the crowd, once anxious, now stood in awe. Luna turned, breathing heavily, her heart racing. Colt, also trembling from adrenaline, looked at her with something different in his eyes, admiration that went beyond the surface. "You fought like a wildcat," he said, breathless. She smirked, a glimmer of vulnerability in her eyes. The defeated Brick crawled toward them, rage bubbling over. "This isn't over, Luna." With a swift motion, Luna leveled her gun at him. "No, Brick, it ends here." As Brick was escorted out, the tension still hung thick in the air. Luna felt a strange ache in her chest, a realization dawning. For so long, she had been known as dangerous Luna, volatile and reckless, but tonight, Colt had seen something different. Days turned into weeks, and as the dust settled over Copper Grit, Luna began to carve a place in the town. She and Colt formed an unexpected alliance, a bond that intertwined their fates. While others continued to fear her reputation, he saw more than a hard exterior. He saw resilience, strength, and a heart looking for understanding. One evening, they sat by a fire under the stars. The crackling flames illuminated their faces, revealing the depth of feeling building between them. "You know," Colt said, breaking the comfortable silence, "people have a way of labeling what they can't understand. The truth is," she said softly, "I've buried myself in danger to protect what I love." Colt reached out, brushing a stray hair behind her ear. "You're not alone in this fight anymore." His touch sent a surge of warmth through her. It was the first time in years she felt seen for who she was rather than the fearsome reputation widely spoken of. She asked, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "Letting go doesn't mean losing yourself," he said. That night changed everything. They laughed, cried, and connected in ways that had previously seemed impossible. With each shared story, the walls Luna had built began to crack, and for the first time she felt hope bloom within her. The days passed, and shadows still loomed. Brick Malone was plotting revenge. Luna knew it was only a matter of time before he returned. As whispers of his threats circulated, she and Colt prepared, bolstering defenses around the town. But the night of reckoning arrived sooner than they expected. The air crackled with tension as Brick and his gang stormed back into Copper Grit, dark clouds gathering on the horizon. Brick bellowed. Luna stood tall, fire sparking in her gaze. "You don't scare me, Brick." Colt stepped beside her, identical fierce determination radiating from both of them. "You're finished, Brick. You've lost your place here. With a sudden motion, Brick lunged forward, but they were ready. Gunfire erupted once again, this time supported by the townsfolk rallying behind Luna and Colt. They stood united, a force against the darkness that threatened to engulf them. Colt and Luna moved as one, each shot fired synchronizing like heartbeats, while the townspeople fought back fear with courage. The battle raged, a whirlwind of chaos and resilience that brought forth a truth. Together, they were unstoppable. As the dust settled, the last of Brick's gang fell away, and with it, the fear that had lingered like a storm cloud over Copper Grit. Luna stood strong, no longer just a dangerous reputation, but a protector of her community. With Brick finally subdued, he lay on the ground, his previous bravado fading. "This isn't the end," he spat, but Luna bent down, her voice quiet yet firm. The townsfolk erupted in cheers, but in that moment, Luna turned to Colt, their eyes locking. "You showed them your strength, your heart," he said, pride lacing his words. "You're more than dangerous." In that singular moment, Luna realized the power of stepping beyond fear, stepping into the light. She had faced danger not just as a gunfighter, but as a protector, as someone willing to stand for others. With the sun setting behind them, shining gold upon the town, Luna felt something shift within her. She was no longer bound by the chains of her past. She had fought for something greater than reputation. She had found purpose, connection, and, most importantly, herself. Together with Colt, they forged a future built on trust and unity. No longer was she just a dangerous gunslinger. She was a hero, a protector of those she loved, and a woman unafraid to embrace the complexities of who she was. And as they stood side by side, surveying the town, breathing a sigh of relief, Luna knew they would face the unknown together, braving the storms, claiming their stories and transforming fear into strength. Ultimately, they would be remembered not just for their guns, but for the hearts that beat fiercely within them. Underneath a cobalt sky, the town of Elkhorn lay silent, save for the sound of hurried footsteps and whispered fears. In the heart of the main street, shadowed by the remnants of an old saloon, a crowd gathered, eyes wide with anticipation. They said she was dangerous, a woman to be feared, and yet the dark corners of their minds were drawn to her like moths to a flame. Leela Hayes stood at the far end of the street, her dark hair whipping in the wind. She had faced men in duels and faced them down without a flicker of hesitation, but today felt different. Today, the whispers sharpened into knives, carving her reputation deeper than she ever imagined. The townsfolk called her Deadshot Leela, a mark of a woman who could send a man to the ground without a second thought. Yet that morning, her heart felt heavier than her six-shooter. She had come for a reason, to confront her past, to reclaim the sense of self that seemed buried under layers of fear and expectation. "Leela!" someone shouted, and heads turned. She stood firm, brushing her fingers across the handle of her gun. But as the sun glinted off its polished surface, she felt the weight of the blade of judgment cutting through the crowd. They saw the gun. They saw the woman. Few saw the truth. And that truth was about to step into the light. A figure appeared at the end of the street, a gunslinger named Jake Carter, tall and rugged with a past as heavy as his holster. Leela had heard of him, another name circling the rumor mill, a man who wielded the gun as effortlessly as he fought against the chaos surrounding him. As he approached, a hush fell over the crowd. Jake stepped with confidence, his eyes scanning the gathering before locking onto Leela. "You must be the dangerous one," he said, his voice smooth like the finest bourbon, tinged with a charm that disarmed the tension. "I've heard the stories," Leela replied, a hint of defiance in her tone. He smirked, taking a bold step closer. "Then why not tell me?" Leela felt a mix of irritation and intrigue. Who did he think he was, stepping into her world as if he knew her? She challenged, her voice steady. "I think it's a part of life," he said, returning her gaze with an intensity that jolted her. The crowd around them buzzed, tension tightening like a noose. But amid the chaos, something flickered in Leela's chest. No one had ever dared to challenge her so openly. No one had challenged the very persona she had constructed to survive. Before the moment could linger, the atmosphere shifted again. Dust kicked up as the doors of the saloon burst open, and out walked a group of rough-looking men, the Iron Vipers, notorious in these parts for their penchant for trouble. Their leader, a towering brute named Flint, wore a wicked grin that promised nothing but chaos. Flint shouted, pointing a finger at Leela, the little gunslinger who thinks she owns the streets. Leela stepped forward, her heart pounding but her voice steady. "I don't fear you, Flint." Flint's smile widened as he took a step closer, a palpable tension filling the air. Jake moved beside Leela, unrelenting in his stance. The crowd murmured, eyes darting between the unfolding confrontation. Leela could feel the curious glances friends, enemies, and bystanders witnessing what would become a battle of wills. "Back off, Jake," Flint spat. "I'm making it my business," Jake replied, raising his chin defiantly. Something shifted between him and Leela in that moment, an understanding forged in the flames of that confrontation. Both were daring to stand up against those who had tried to dictate their lives. With a sudden movement, Flint lunged forward, and the standoff erupted into chaos. Gunfire rang out, echoing off the dusty walls surrounding them. Leela braced herself, adrenaline surging through her veins. This was no longer just about her. It was about survival, about standing against the tide of fear that sought to consume her. She moved with precision, her instinct guiding each shot she took. Jake fought alongside her. Every bullet fired another affirmation that they were stronger together. In a moment of clarity, Leela recognized the beauty in this chaotic dance of danger, a chance to reclaim her truth. Leela felt alive as she shot her way through the gang. Each bullet found its target, each pull of the trigger bringing a sense of liberation. Jake, ever by her side, was a powerful force, complementing her skills perfectly. The chaos built, the adrenaline surged, and they became a whirlwind of action, lost in the moment. As the dust settled, bodies lay scattered on the ground. Leela stood panting, the enormity of what they had just faced crashing over her like a tidal wave. She turned to Jake, their eyes meeting amid the debris left by the skirmish. "You fought like hell," he said, a grin creeping across his face, but his eyes held something deeper. "And you didn't just stand by," she responded, breathless. "I fought with you," he corrected her gently. His words settled into her, softening the hard edges of her heart. "You see what they don't," she said quietly, her guard beginning to drop. While the townspeople slowly emerged from their hiding places, the air filled with admiration and awe. No longer were they just whispering her name in fear. They were witnessing Leela Hayes as she truly was, a protector, a fighter, and a woman who had earned her place in this gritty world. A young boy asked, wide-eyed and hopeful, breaking through the remnants of chaos. "For now," Leela said, squatting down to meet his gaze. "But I'll make sure we all stay safe." In the days that followed, Leela began to step fully into her role as a protector of Elkhorn. With the support of the townsfolk, she fortified her connections and became the glue that held the fragile community together in times of strife. Jake stayed by her side, their bond growing deeper as they faced challenges together. Every training session, every shared meal, brought them closer. Yet beneath the surface, Leela grappled with her identity, still branded as dangerous, yet yearning to be seen as more than just her title. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the landscape, Leela and Jake sat atop a nearby hill. The view held a rare serenity that felt like a balm for Leela's restless soul. "That was quite a show back there," Jake broke the silence, his voice teasing. "Yeah, well, it's what I do," she replied, but her tone held an undercurrent of doubt. He pressed gently, his gaze focused on her. She sighed, looking out at the fading light. "That's how they see me." "Then show them otherwise," he said, conviction lacing his words. "You're not just a gun in a holster, Leela." For the first time in a long while, she felt a flicker of hope kindling in her chest. She asked, vulnerability creeping into her voice. "I do," Jake replied sincerely. "You've dedicated yourself to protecting others." As night fell, they shared stories beneath the blanket of stars, peeling away layers of past hurts and misunderstandings just like peeling an onion. With every laugh and confession, they moved closer to one another, forging a connection that went beyond the guns they carried, one rooted in shared experiences, mutual respect and understanding. But just as peace seemed within reach, shadow loomed once more. Rustling rumors slipped through the streets like wind, hinting that Flint's gang wasn't finished yet. They would surely return for revenge, and this time, Leela sensed it wouldn't just be a one-time skirmish. destruction lay in wait. The day of reckoning arrived sooner than expected. The sky turned dark, heavy clouds rolling in as a storm brewed on the horizon, mirroring the tension that gripped Elkhorn. As the vipers descended on the town, they ignited fear, chaos erupting like a raging wildfire. "Stay behind me," Jake urged Leela as the crowd panicked, scattering to find safety. "No," she said, fierce determination igniting. Flint led the charge, barking orders as his men swarmed like locusts. Leela felt every heartbeat in her chest, the resonance pushing her to step into the role she had fought so hard to embrace. She took a deep breath, grounding herself, and then let her instincts take over. As the battle began, the thundering of gunfire sounded once more. This time, it was more than just survival. It was about a community that had rallied around her, about finding purpose in the chaos. She felt alive, eyes blazing with determination. Jake was at her side, mirroring her every move, their bond solidified in unity as they pushed against the tide of despair. Round after round, they fought, and Leela pushed through the pain coursing through her body. She was more than the gun she wielded. She was strength and tenacity, and she would not let them tear down what she had built. With each enemy that fell, the townsfolk began to rally behind them, armed with whatever they could find. It was no longer just Leela and Jake, it was a fierce collective, standing against the tide. Courage rose in the hearts of those who had once cowered in fear, and they fought alongside her, emboldened by her spirit. Finally, in the midst of the chaos, Leela found herself face to face with Flint. His anger was palpable, a tempest of rage that threatened to consume everything in its path. "You think you've won," he spat, lunging toward her. In that moment, Leela felt a surge of clarity. She drew her gun not just as a weapon, but as a symbol of her journey. "It ends here, Flint." Their eyes locked, a primal understanding passing between them. But this time, Leela was unyielding. With one swift shot, she brought down the threat that had loomed over her life, over the town. The air rang with silence as Flint fell. As victory settled over Elkhorn, cheers erupted, and the townspeople gathered around Leela and Jake, fear replaced with hope, chaos replaced with clarity. Someone shouted, hugs and laughter spreading through the crowd. They had stood together through every trial, every shot, and emerged victorious. But as Leela searched through the sea of faces that once judged her, she realized that the greatest victory was not just in defeating Flint, it was in reclaiming her identity. She was alive, liberated, and filled with purpose. She had shifted the narrative of her life from one of fear to one of strength, community, and resilience. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue over Elkhorn, Leela turned to Jake, a smile breaking through. He nodded, pride shimmering in his eyes. Together. Leela took a deep breath, sensing the weight of all that had changed. And for the first time, she felt truly free. She had faced her fears, confronted her past, and dared to emerge from the shadows. No longer defined by danger, she was a protector, a fierce warrior, and Leela Hayes was finally home. The dry wind whipped through the streets of Redemption, a town steeped in both legends and whispers. Just beyond the edge of town, the sun fell behind the mountains, casting long shadows over the cracked earth. On this fateful evening, the saloon doors swung open with a creak, and a hush enveloped the room. A voice cut through the silence like a gunshot. The townsfolk exchanged nervous glances, the tension palpable. They were all too aware of the tales that surrounded her. She was feared, her reputation as lethal as her sharp aim. But tonight, something was different. Sarah stepped into the dim light of the saloon, her dark hair pulled back into a tight braid, wearing a long duster that swirled around her like a fortress. Eyes locked onto her, the air crackled with anticipation. She moved like a predator, surveying her territory, and for a brief moment, the insignificance of the crowd faded away. A danger lurked in her gaze, but either could devastate her enemies or protect the innocent. "Word is you're looking for trouble," came a voice from the back. It belonged to Flanagan, the local bully whose bravado was only matched by his ignorance. Sarah's eyes narrowed, yet she merely smirked. "Trouble finds me wherever I go," she replied coolly, her tone dripping with defiance. The crowd tensed, tension building like a thunderstorm on the horizon. Sarah was not just anyone. She had taken men down who'd been a hell of a lot tougher than Flanagan. Yet Flanagan's bravado pushed him forward, fueled by whiskey and dreams of fame. "I reckon you'll think twice before you draw on me," he said, false bravado coloring his words. As if on cue, the saloon doors swung open again and in walked a tall figure clad in black. Nathaniel Cross, the gunslinger whose reputation was as formidable as her own. He was known to have ice in his veins and a steady hand, a man who knew when to draw and when to wait. The room fell into an even deeper silence as he approached the bar. He asked, his voice low but commanding. The atmosphere shifted once more. Flanagan, already feeling the heat of his own stupidity, straightened his back, masking his uncertainty. "She doesn't scare me," he shot back, though his voice wavered slightly. Sarah remained still, ready for anything, a silent storm ready to break at the slightest provocation. But Nathaniel turned his attention to her instead. "And you?" The question hung in the air, filling the space between them with weight. "I'm here to find my own way," she replied, her voice steady. Nathaniel nodded, respect glinting in his eyes. But Flanagan knew no point in retreat. Perhaps it was foolhardiness, or perhaps it was the whiskey talking, but he took another step forward. "You think you can just walk in here and challenge me?" "No, Flanagan," Sarah shot back, her voice cold and final. The tension cracked like a whip, and in a flash it spiraled into chaos. Flanagan drew his weapon, aiming directly at her. Without thinking, Sarah's hand flew to her own gun, a dance of reflex and survival. She fired first, and the room erupted into chaos. Sound drowned in the barrage of gunfire, chaos taking hold like an avalanche. Laughter turned to screams as patrons scattered, seeking cover. Nathaniel, perched at the bar like a sentinel, took a calculated step towards Sarah, moving as a shadow against the onslaught. He shouted, and they found themselves back to back, united in the face of danger. Sarah could feel the adrenaline coursing through her veins as she focused on surviving. The environment, filled with dread, transformed into a battlefield where instincts took over. Every shot fired became a part of her narrative, the chaos igniting something deep within her. With the final echoes of gunfire fading, Flanagan lay sprawled on the floor, defeated. Amid the wreckage of overturned tables and shattered glasses, Sarah turned to face Nathaniel, breathless and alive. "You fought like hell," he complimented, the admiration in his voice unmistakable. "And you didn't run away," she shot back, still catching her breath. There was something about him, a quiet confidence that drew her in. "Running isn't my style," he replied, a hint of a smile creeping onto his lips. As adrenaline subsided, the patrons of the saloon began to emerge from their hiding spots, hesitant but curious. The silence broke into a chorus of murmurs, all mixing with fear as they absorbed the aftermath. There, in the center of chaos, stood Sarah, not just as the dangerous gunslinger they thought they knew, but as someone who had reclaimed her story. A woman whispered. She took him down without a second thought. But amid the admiration, Sarah felt a weight rising within her. Reputation was a double-edged sword, and while she had survived the fight, the cheers did not drown out the insecurities that lurked beneath the surface. Nathaniel caught her eye, sensing her turmoil. "You know, they only see what they want to see," she echoed. "Isn't that all I am?" "No," he replied, his gaze steady. "You're a survivor, someone who fights for what they believe in." With those words, the veil began to lift. Every battle she had fought, every shot fired in anger or fear, took on new meaning. Maybe there was a truth worth finding, lurking beneath the layers that others had imposed on her. Days turned into weeks, and amidst their shared endeavors, a bond began to form between Sarah and Nathaniel. They trained together, confronting their pasts while molding their futures. The lines separating them as gunslingers faded, and the connection they forged grew more substantial, grounded not only in mutual respect, but an understanding of the pain they both carried. One evening, they sat around a crackling fire under a blanket of stars, the night thick with untold stories. Sarah leaned back, letting the warmth wrap around her. "You know, I've been known as Dangerous Sarah for as long as I can remember." Nathaniel nodded, his expression genuine. "You're not defined by just one part of your life. You can choose what you want to carry forward." A flicker of hope ignited in her chest. "It's never too late," he replied softly. "You have a choice to embrace your truth." The rest of the night melted away like the warmth from the fire as they shared their stories, struggles, hopes, and dreams that had long been buried under layers of loss and heartache. With every word, the walls protecting their hearts began to crumble, and vulnerability seeped into the space they shared. But the past does not let go so easily. News spread like wildfire about the Iron Viper's regathering. Whispers of revenge echoed in the shadows of redemption, darkening the skies of their newfound peace. Sarah and Nathaniel could feel the weight of fear creeping back, threatening to destroy the fragile safety they had created. She felt alive again, but shadows kept reminding her of the potential struggle ahead. The day of reckoning arrived, cloaked in foreboding. Clouds rolled in and an unsettling energy hung in the air. The residents of Redemption gathered, their faces painted with concern as they witnessed the Iron Vipers creeping closer to town like a beast awakening from slumber. Flint stepped forward, rage clear in his eyes. He bellowed. Sarah stood her ground, her heart pounding in her chest. "Stand aside, girl. You have no idea what you're up against," Flint shot back, his men looming behind him, a storm cloud gathering. Nathaniel stepped alongside her, defiance engraved in his posture. "We've faced you before, Flint." The crowd buzzed, drawing strength from Sarah and Nathaniel's unwavering stance. In that moment, the town became a united front against the chaos, the fire within them igniting a determination to reclaim their lives. The fight erupted as dust clouds billowed and gunfire rang through the air. Shots echoed like thunder, a symphony of defiance against the power that sought to control them. Sarah felt the adrenaline surge once again, and she moved with purpose, not just fighting for her own survival, but for everyone who stood beside her. As the chaos danced around her, she caught sight of Nathaniel, effortlessly moving through the fray, each shot fired connecting hope to loyalty. They formed a ballet of strength and camaraderie, their bond unbreakable as they pushed forward against the darkness. In the heat of battle, Sarah found herself face to face with Flint once more. The animosity crackled between them, the air electric with unfulfilled vengeance. He sneered. "I don't think," Sarah said, her voice low and steady. She drew her gun, more determined than ever to reclaim herself. The world had judged her for too long, and now it was her time to rewrite the narrative. In that decisive moment, she pulled the trigger, a swift motion heavy with the weight of her journey. Flint fell, the threat dissipating like smoke swallowed by the wind, and with it came the touch of liberation. As the dust settled and silence enveloped the town, applause erupted, cheers ringing out into the night. The townsfolk raced towards Sarah and Nathaniel, wrapping them in jubilant embraces, gratitude etched on every face. A voice rang out among the crowd, admiration igniting the air. Together, they had reclaimed their town. More than that, Sarah felt a warmth spread through her heart. The community had seen her, not just as dangerous, but as a force for good. As the celebrations mingled with shared laughter, Sarah turned to Nathaniel, eyes bright with realization. "And we survived," he replied, a proud smile growing. "You've changed the narrative, Sarah." In that moment, Sarah knew that she had taken every fear and turned it into strength. She had carved out a space where vulnerability met authenticity, where danger became the catalyst for unity. Underneath the expansive sky filled with stars, Sarah felt alive, liberated from the chains that once bound her. She wasn't merely a gunfighter, she was a protector, a symbol of resilience. And as the fire crackled beside them, she found not just her identity but a purpose that went far beyond the gun in her hand. Together, they would shape a new future, free from the confines of fear, fueled by courage and the power of community. In the heart of redemption, she had emerged victorious, not just against the forces that threatened her life, but against the shadows that had tried to define her. "This is our town," Sarah thought, glancing at Nathaniel. In the heart of a desolate canyon, the sun set low, spilling crimson light across the rugged landscape. Dust kicked up from the heels of a lone rider as she approached the town of Iron Ridge, each hoofbeat resonating like a heartbeat in the stillness. They said she was dangerous, a Wild West gunslinger with a reputation that had men trembling in their boots. But as she drew closer, the tale morphed into an enigma waiting to unravel. Her name was Cassie Wolfe, and as she entered the town, a hush fell over the street. Men paused, chatter faded, and eyes widened with a mix of respect and fear. Cassie was known for her speed, her sharp aim, and an untamed spirit that danced on the edge of law and chaos. But hidden beneath that fierce exterior was a woman searching for something she couldn't quite name, a sense of belonging perhaps, or maybe just a chance to be seen for who she truly was. As she dismounted, Cassie felt the weight of curiosity pressing down on her. With each step, the wooden planks of the boardwalk creaked underfoot, echoing the uncertainty swirling within her. She pushed open the saloon doors, the familiar scent of whiskey and sweat washing over her. The crowd turned, eyes riveted to her, anticipation crackling in the air like static electricity. A voice cut through the murmurings, its owner leaning casually against the bar. It was a tall man with a weathered face and eyes like tempered steel. Jake Morgan, a gunslinger known for his own stories that twisted through town like a well-worn rope. Cassie shot him a bemused look. "Just passing through," he echoed, a chuckle escaping from his lips. "I'm not running from trouble, Jake." She approached the bar and the bartender, a grizzled man named Old Tom, poured her a whiskey without hesitation. "You'll find trouble wherever you roam, girl." Cassie felt the weight of his words, but something else simmered beneath the surface. It was one thing to be known as dangerous, but was that the only thing she had to offer? "But I'm not just trouble," she replied, her voice firmer now. The crowd murmured, interest piqued. Jake said, leaning closer, his tone shifting, "What's the story then?" Before Cassie could answer, the saloon doors crashed open again, and the atmosphere shifted like a storm brewing on the horizon. A group of men swaggered in, led by a hulking figure with a scar running from his forehead to his chin. Troy the Bear Malone. He was a notorious outlaw, feared and respected in equal measure. "Look who we have here," Troy bellowed, his voice like thunder, drawing everyone's attention. Cassie felt her heart quicken, adrenaline surging through her veins. She had crossed paths with Troy before, and it had never ended well. "I'm not here for your bar, Malone." His chuckle was low and menacing. Jake stepped between them, tension brewing like dark clouds overhead. "You think you can just come in here and bully everyone, Troy?" Troy's eyes glittered with malice. "Stand down, Morgan." But Cassie felt a fire igniting within her. She challenged, drawing her gun with a speed that silenced the room. The saloon turned electric with anticipation. Troy's laughter rang out, but it was laced with disbelief. "You think you can take me on?" "I'm not afraid of you," Cassie replied, her voice fierce. Suddenly, the noise of the room faded into the background. Cassie's heart raced, primal instincts taking over as she focused solely on Troy. No longer was she the dangerous woman they whispered about. She was the embodiment of her own courage. "Then let's see what you've got," Troy sneered, his hand reaching for his own weapon, muscles coiling like a snake preparing to strike. The air crackled with tension. Just as Troy's finger brushed the trigger, Cassie fired. The sound echoed, sharp and sudden, filling the saloon with a shockwave. The bullet ricocheted off the wooden beam above Troy, sending splinters splattering down. She shouted, both defiant and alive. In the next moment, chaos erupted. Troy and his gang lunged forward, spurred by the shock of her fearless retaliation. The crowd dispersed, panic blooming as gunfire rang out, and the saloon erupted into a storm of chaos. Cassie and Jake found themselves back to back, fighting as a unit against the advancing mob of men. The roar of gunfire was deafening, but Cassie felt clarity amidst the chaos. She had spent years running from the title of dangerous, but now she embraced it. In a flurry of motion, she took control, her instincts guiding her through the mayhem. Jake covered her as she moved, each shot they fired weaving a tapestry of resilience and survival. It was as if they danced through the storm, seamlessly synchronized in their fight. Just when Cassie thought they had the upper hand, Troy unleashed a whirlwind from the back of the crowd. A roar echoed as he charged toward them, eyes blazing with fury. He shouted, fury rising in his voice. Cassie felt a rush of adrenaline. Time slowed as her senses heightened. She took a breath, steadying herself as she faced the man who had intimidated so many. In that pivotal moment, she took aim. Heart thundering in her chest, she pulled the trigger again. The shot rang true, hitting Troy squarely in the shoulder, causing him to stumble backward. Gasps of disbelief filled the room, the tide shifting as those who had once feared Troy now watched in awe. With him down for the count, the The remaining gang members realized their leader was no match for the combination of Cassie's deadly aim and Jake's unyielding resolve. They began to retreat, fear etched on their faces as they scrambled to escape. The saloon erupted into cheers, witnessing something they never anticipated: the transformation of a dangerous gunslinger into a local hero. In the aftermath, Cassie stood panting, confusion and adrenaline coursing through her. She had fought against her past, against the chains that bound her identity, and emerged stronger than before. Jake stepped beside her, pride shimmering in his eyes. "You did it, Cassie." "That wasn't just about showing them," she replied, breathless. "It was about proving I could be more than just dangerous." "You're more than just that," he assured her. But despite the victories, shadows still loomed. As they gathered their breath amidst the busted furniture and fading crowd, Cassie felt a shiver down her spine. Against the noise of celebration, a thought niggled at her: the irony of being labeled dangerous. Had she fought merely for that title, or was there something more waiting to be discovered within her? As the townsfolk celebrated around them, Cassie's thoughts drifted toward the uncertain future. This victory was hard-won, but it came with a price. The world was chaotic, and fame could shift like the wind. Suddenly, a shout cut through her reverie. A voice rang out from above, a figure standing atop the saloon roof, silhouetted against the dimming sky. The cheers fell silent, stunned gasps reverberating through the crowd. Cassie's heart sank as she recognized the figure, the rogue that had haunted her for years, a familiar face from her past. Jack Donovan, a ruthless bounty hunter who had crossed her path more than once and was now back with a vengeance. Jack bellowed. Fear gripped her, but she steeled herself to act. "Revenge," he called down, malice dripping from his words. With those words, he unsheathed a rifle from his back, aiming straight at her. Cassie felt her breath hitch in her throat, the storm clouds gathering once more. Jake shouted, pushing her to the side just as a shot rang out. The bullet whizzed past, the sound echoing through the street, and chaos erupted again, shouting, confusion, and panic as people scrambled for safety. But as her heart raced, a realization dawned on Cassie: this was it. She was caught in a whirlwind of danger once more, but this battle was different. No longer was she just a dangerous gunslinger. She was more. She was a woman prepared to confront her past, to fight for her story, and to harness the strength she had only begun to discover. With determination burning in her heart, Cassie drew her weapon, locking eyes with Jake, who stood ready beside her. "This time we take the fight to him," she declared, voice steady. Jake asked, already anticipating the thrill of conflict. "We draw him out. We show him we're not afraid," she replied, a fierce smile creeping onto her lips. United under the weight of their past and the shared purpose of their present, they prepared to reclaim their narrative. As they stepped into the fray once more, time held its breath, the air thick with anticipation, and danger lingered on the precipice of an impending storm. What waited for them around the corner remained shrouded in uncertainty, but Cassie felt something awaken within her: the power to redefine her story, to face the shadows, and to emerge on the other side as not just a dangerous gunslinger but a survivor, ready to carve her own fate. And as she squared her shoulders and took a deep breath, she knew she was ready to rewrite her legacy, one shot at a time.